Greetings and welcome to this quick tutorial on how to take care of your Montblanc 149. This is the vintage edition, and then we have a modern version as well that we're going to take a look at, as well as Montblanc 146. I have the vintage version here. Imagine you bought one of these on an auction from a second-hand store. We'll go through what things to look for and what to do to help them run optimally, especially when you get them for a lower price from certain websites. They may not initially work for you because many of these pens have been sitting in the shelf or in the closet for decades probably. I've gotten some of these that had dried up ink in it that was almost impossible to get going. So we're going to talk about what to do if we encounter those issues. And so let's get started. The tools we need for these are the Montblanc 149 and 146 nib tools, if you want to do anything with the nibs, as well as the piston. The piston removal tool is the same for 146 and 149, so we'll need just one. And then we have the 149 nib tool. This pretty much works for all the 149s that I have, vintage and modern. The next thing we need is, if you really want to take the nib all the way out, you need one of these knockout blocks. You can improvise and use something else instead, but this is the best tool for the job. We need a syringe to flush the pen. We need a screwdriver, flathead, if you want to disassemble the cap. And we need a heating gun, a hair dryer or something that blows hot air to loosen the joints so that we can open them more easily. So the most common case scenario for these pens is that you get one of these vintage pens from an auction or a second-hand website, and you get them, usually it looks rusty and kind of dirty, and then you try to turn this, just impossible to turn. So right away, before you even get to the nib, you realize that the piston doesn't really turn. You have two options: one, to return it and get your money back and try a different auction, and two, to try to fix it for yourself. Now this piston not turning initially, that is a little bit difficult situation, because then the tool, you cannot get in here to open the piston. So in this case, what I have done is I have heated this a little bit, and if you have an ultrasonic cleaner, just put this upside down for 5-10 minutes at ultrasound. Let the ultrasound do its magic. And I've never had this situation where, with those two techniques, I've been unable to open this, loosen this up. So I put this in the ultrasound cleaner for 5 minutes. Cold water, not hot water, because the water warms up in the ultrasound cleaner. If you don't have the ultrasound, just leave it in lukewarm water for maybe 15-20 minutes, longer if you have to. And then you take it and give it a nice heating gun and warm it up. Don't go crazy, just take your time. You don't want to melt anything, you just want to warm it up so that it's hot to touch. So now we have this open, and you can see that there are little notches there. There's little holes that are meant for the tool to be inserted in order to disassemble the pen. We have the Montblanc 146 and 149 piston removal tool. These can be purchased from the eBay. This particular one came from Germany, but you can buy ones from China. They're a little bit cheaper. These are sold for around $30 to $40. So what we do is we find the grooves. On both sides and insert that. And at this point you can just turn it. What I've found is that if you just turn it like this, it can dislodge and scratch your pen. So I just screw it in all the way. Snug but not very tight. And hold it, turn it. We turn it counterclockwise to open. Lefty loosey. This particular pen has a brass piston housing, so it seems like it's open. I am going to just pull this away gently. There we go. I'll put these ones aside. So I'll rest the barrel, and you want to take notice of how much piston is left out when this is screwed almost all the way in, because when we put this back in, that's probably the biggest challenge, is to get this right. I'm going to unscrew this. Screw it all the way in. You can see it's around 3 millimeters. Around 3 millimeters space left. I leave it like that. You can always adjust this further if you want less ink in your pen. So the next thing is to actually disassemble this. So what we're going to do is unscrew this and hold it here, and it comes out. And you can keep unscrewing this, and finally this piston knob with the helix comes out. You see that this pin has been already greased, so this pen is donating its body to science, so we can learn from this how to assemble and disassemble 149s. The one thing I would not do in this tutorial is to remove the piston helix. That I do have the tools to put it back on. It is a nightmare to take this on and off, so I'll leave this. If you have a pen that you get that the piston helix is broken, just return it. Alternatively, you can buy this from eBay if you look around for around $50. So if the pen was cheap enough that's worth keeping, you can always buy this. I think they sell them even like new old stock. So I would leave this here. The barrel is disassembled, so this is part of the piston assembly. The one thing you have to keep in mind is that there's also this little ring that in some of the pens it comes loose and it falls. So be careful to not lose it. And it goes one way. See this? There's a little recess. That recess points upwards when you try to reassemble it. Otherwise it's not going to work, so watch out. I'm going to put these aside. Which brings us to the barrel. So at this point, if you have no problems with the nib, if you don't have any problems with the nib, it looks clean, you can leave it like that. But we didn't come here to leave things like that, so we're going to disassemble this. For this, we'll need the Montblanc 149 nib tool. For this, also very, very important, make sure you warm it up. Some of these are clogged with ink and old grease, old silicone material that are pretty stuck, and if you try to turn them with your nib tool, you're going to break the section or destroy those little grooves or make it look ugly actually. To get to the nib, we'll need the 149 nib tool. It's good for 1950 to 2014. It's pretty much all 149s this will work with. The next thing to pay attention is these grooves on both sides of the nib. So we just gently rest this in those grooves, make sure that it's inserted, and we give it a go counterclockwise. If you see that it's resisting, don't push because you're going to make scratches. At that point you can soak this for a little bit and warm it up with the heating gun or a hair dryer and try again. These generally loosen up with those two techniques. So this is loosened now. Just going to turn this by hand. Next thing we would need to do is take the nib out. If you do not have the nib tool, I would recommend to leave this as is without disassembling it. And then what you can do is get a bulb syringe and add water and flush it through this. You can soak it a little bit and then flush it again until it clears. You can generally clear the feed and the nib with that technique, but there are sometimes you have to take more drastic measures because a pen would skip. So I bring my tool, nib tool. This is called a knockout block. So what we do is we put it here. We need something to gently tap this. I use my hand. I want to use a hammer. If you need a hammer, maybe that's too much force. So I'd be careful. The nib and the feet are out and about, and you can see from glass of water here. Make sure these are nicely washed. The nib too. So at this point, if you have any problem with the feet, you can take a soft bristle brush and try to brush this off. Here's the nib and feet housing. I'll leave this aside. For most newer versions, you will need a flathead screwdriver. The older pens, sometimes you can just unscrew it here. What's easier, I don't know why they had to change this for worse. So now the cap is off. You can put these aside. There we go. At this point we have disassembled as much of the pen as comfortably possible without going to the helix. We can excuse ourselves for not disassembling this. The next thing we want to do is we want to clean this up and put it back together. So what we're going to do is take a syringe. So what I would do is take some water, occlude one side, and then put some water in here. A good 5 ml. You can dump it here. repeat. Rinse and repeat. Aside, the nib and feet we already rinsed. This section doesn't really need rinsing, but what we would do is give it a clean. Some water. It's clean. And let's start putting these back together in the reverse order. The first thing that we will put together is the nib and the feet. There's no specific area where you need to push this up to, so we'll just play by ear. And the nib sides go by the notches, and then it's shorter upwards. We're just gonna go like this. That's it. Easy. Not perfect until it is perfect. There we go. Next thing that we would assemble is, let's take care of the cap. This is not directional. Unlike the newer ones have a breathing hole under the clip. The older it's good to go. So what we want to do is put silicone grease where this assembly goes in and out. This is kind of like Frank's hot sauce, so you put it everywhere. The silicone. Don't put it on the nib and feed. So the right way to put this in is the big screws go into the pin, so the piston follows that. So this is the tricky part, is how much of the piston do you screw, the piston knob you screw before you engage the piston. I remember it was a little bit out at the end. So I'm going to engage it now and then try to screw this in, see what we end up with. So a little bit more left than I wanted. So I'll make sure, engage it sooner, go back a little bit, engage the piston knob now. Perfect. So this is good. The next thing we would do is just silicone grease this part. Perfect. So the next thing we do is put our ring back up. Remember, the groove goes up. Perfect. Unscrew this just a little bit so that we can fit our tool. Just push this in, get the piston engaged, and screw this in just a little bit, as much as you can. And then we get our 149 piston tool. We unscrew the piston a little bit to fit this tool. As soon as we fit it, we can screw it in so that it holds the tool, and then we can just turn it out. I don't tend to screw this too tight because sometimes you can crack it. So that is assembled now. Next thing is we put the nib. You can put some silicone on the nib. Thread, not on the nib itself. And we can gently screw this in until it stops. And then what we do is we take the nib 149 nib removal tool, go from the top, it's getting wrist here, and just push this just a little bit. Don't tighten too much because this section can break. And that's another hefty tag, price tag. Nice disassemble. This is assembled back up, and the cap is back on. And hereby we have disassembled, cleaned, greased, and reassembled our vintage Montblanc 149. It is simple to do, but it is a little bit of a skill that needs a little bit of practice. So if at any point you feel like the piston is not turning, the tool is not working, and the pen is resisting the turns, don't push, because you're gonna either break your tool, which is very much less likely than breaking the resin of the pen, or the section that you're trying to unscrew can break and give you trouble, and you'll need parts from eBay. So if things seem tight, just soak them a little bit. Water is your friend. If you have an ultrasound, put it through an ultrasound. 149, Montblanc 149 can take the ultrasound. There are very few pens that shouldn't put through the ultrasound, but the 149 is not one of them, so you can put that through. We have Waterman Serenity Blue. This was just sitting there. I just got it from my vintage pen. Might as well use it. So before I grease this pen, moment of truth. Let's give this a try. Let's see how good of a job we did. Check witness. Awesome. Very, very wet. So this pen is serviced. It's ready to work for a long time before it needs to be serviced again. The one thing I would look for is I would put water in and out a couple of times and lift this up to make sure water doesn't leak through the piston, or if the ink leaks through the piston, there's a problem with the piston sealing. This pen does not have that problem, and if that happens, it could mean that this piston needs to be tightened or need to be drove forward a little bit before it engages, so more of it should be left out at the end. Otherwise, the pen is in great condition. It's good to go for use-wise. The one thing that I should have mentioned in the beginning is that whenever I get one of these 149s that's new, I inspect them. I inspect them closely for cracks. These pens crack at the lip here. So I inspect these under a loop, inspect this area under a loop, and inspect this engagement area under a loop to make sure that make sure it's flush and it's not like loosey-goosey and there's not a big gap. And the other thing I inspect is this nib section. Some of these older pens, they have two-piece section. This place comes out too, and that's one of the pieces that's easily cracked on many of the 149s, and that's something that you should pay attention to. As somebody who doesn't have experience with Montblanc 149 disassembly and servicing, I do not recommend you disassemble the nib. The steps I showed you is if you want to do it at your own risk and you have done many of them and you want to experience, or you're really stuck and you need to fix a nib that doesn't flow or that's misaligned or the feed needs cleaned and washed or ultrasounded. You can take those steps at your own risk, but I generally don't recommend disassembly of this part. The most important thing to do when you get one of these pens is to make sure the piston is clean, the inside is clean, and that you can flush water through with a syringe, bulb syringe. You can flush water through this, and with that you can clear more than 90% of these pens. And then the other place you look for cracks is where the piston engages, the piston assembly is screwed in. You try to look very close. If you don't have a loop, many of the cameras these days have macro features. With the video you can look in, or with the loop you can look very closely. Now, I've heard people say how to spot fake Montblanc 149s. You will see that they say, oh, there's a pix here, and if you shine a bright light here, it kind of look red, and you can see the writings here. They're better quality. So all of those are true of Montblanc 149s, but they also could be true of the fake ones. So the newer fake pens are actually frighteningly close to the original 149, the genuine 149. One thing I could tell you is that the Montblanc 149 is not one of the most faked pens. I have had ones that were broken and cracked and didn't work, but I've never had really one that was fake. I do look for certain things on auctions before I purchase them, but I've never had one of these fake really. I've had 146s be fake and 145s be fake definitely, but the 145, just as a general observation, I haven't seen fake ones of these. I say that if you get one of these from Japan or one of the US sellers, secondhand sellers, show it to a friend who's familiar with the pen. The 149 nib is very, very difficult to replicate to the trained eyes. This nib is really not possible to replicate for the fakers and cloners. The way they grind and polish the tipping material, the way it's built all together, is very difficult to replicate. So those are my 2 cents about fakery in 149s. The next thing we can look at is the modern version of 149. The piston disassembly is pretty much the same. The one thing that's different in modern pens is that the nib section assembly is a little bit different depending on what area you get this from. The nib section is either 2-piece or 1-piece. Two-piece meaning that once you remove the nib, there is housing here that's separate from the body. The old one that you saw, the housing was not separate from the body, so it was a little bit easier to handle. The newer ones, some of them have two sections, and that's prone to cracking when you try to put that back on. So what I will do is I will quickly disassemble this. This is a pen that I recently got. I haven't inked it yet. This was from a secondhand store. So like I said earlier, the first thing I want to do is warm this nib section up and see if I can unscrew it easily. The newer 149s have their grooves up and down. Okay, so make sure that the tool is all the way in the groove, and then just turn it. It's actually turning quite easy. Okay, so this is turning all the way from the section. That's what we're talking about, is that you see this is the original Montblanc sealing material. So what my nib tool did was disassemble the section. What we need is this part. Make sure the nib tool is set. I think I loosened it up, so this part should be easy to take out. Again, you can see the original sealant material is there. We don't need those. So, like we mentioned earlier, this is the more modern version of the pen, and it has the two-piece section. This is probably from 2010s. So we inspect the section, make sure it's not cracked. This looks good. Rinse this. At this point I can put some silicone grease if I thought the piston was firm. This piston is actually, it's not bad, but you know what? Why not? We're gonna put some silicone grease. I'll reach in there and just go to the walls, and that's where the piston contacts, and just twist this a couple of times. It's nicely lubricated. The next thing we're going to do is lubricate this section and put this back on. It goes one way, and we have to make sure we clean this after. And then lubricate this section. We'll be super liberal with the silicone grease. And we put this through and try to thread it slowly until it stops. Don't push anymore. And we use our tool. Do not tighten this too much, because that this piece of the nib section is gonna break right off and send you right to the eBay. And that nib housing is quite expensive to purchase aftermarket. So here we have our modern 149, also greased up, and the nib section examined. Seems like it's good. We're going to flush this with water one time. This is a relatively new pen, so I expect the nib to work just fine. I'll show you the assembly of these nibs that have screws. You engage the flathead screwdriver, just unscrew it. Simple enough. Once we take this away, we inspect for cracks. Looks good. This is actually directional. I'm gonna wipe this a bit. This cap is actually directional, it only goes one way, in one specific spot. So this nib feels a little bit dry, and if you're not used to this, I'm going to show you a 15-second technique to make this wet. So pre adjust. I'm going to show. So basically we hold it like this, separate it, and spread it a little bit. See the ties spread a little bit. Just leave it like that. That's it. It should be wet as a hose. Wet. Hose. Oh, this is so much better. There you go. 15-second wetness protection. I'm happy with this. And I can examine this under the loupe later. This is pretty smooth, so I have no complaints, and it's wet compared to before I adjusted it. You see that? Very nice. Nice and wet. I think I love writing with this. I have several medium modern nibs, and they're very easy to adjust back. If you want it dry, just squeeze this here and it goes dry a little bit, or very easy to work with. So I'm happy with this, happy with the other pen that we adjusted. And I do have 146 here. I think the video is going too long. The steps are exactly the same as the 149s. If someone is interested in me showing a separate tutorial for 146s, please do let me know, and I will do my best to accommodate that. And otherwise, I hope this helps somebody service their own pen as opposed to sending it to someone else to service for a hefty price. And if there are any questions, please do let me know. And I hope that you follow me for more. Have a great day. Goodbye.